This may be one of our last chances to stack crypto before it explodes into the end of the year. And institutions know this, which explains how the crypto market is rigged against you. Because over the last week, we've seen loads of volatility. The market nearly dumped 11% for a $450 billion loss before printing this little scam pump only to be sold right back off into. While Bitcoin is back into new low territory at the time of recording this video. So what's really going on? Well, I believe this is happening because insiders are playing with the crypto market and want you to sell your crypto to them cheap so they can hold on to it through the end of this bull market cycle and sell it to you at a far higher price when the majority of retail investors FOMO. But let's be real, this isn't news, right? The markets have always been this way. It's a zero-sum game, and the majority of the best investors become very rich because they don't operate like the crowds. And arguably, they have far more money than the crowds, which means they can actually move markets when they coordinate. While 94% of retailers continue to make the same mistakes, great investors learn from them and develop the mental fortitude and the skill set to buy when the time is ripe for buying. The question is right now the right time for buying? We're going to cover that in this video. And at the end of the day, you have to remember that the best time to sell is when everyone is euphoric. Right now, we are not in peak euphoria. And this actually starts to make sense when you look at Google Trends. When you type in the term or the phrase Coinbase, you begin to realize that it actually peaks off at a 100% popularity at the peak of a bull market cycle, like December of 2017, or yet again in April of 2021. Right now, you can see we're only marking about 29 as of August 2025, which means we are not in euphoric territory just yet. And when you look at a conglomerate of virtually all of the on-chain analytics and bull market peak indicators, we are in 100% hold territory. Still, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared for a bit more of a dip, as some of these insiders or whales unload their capital in order to create these dips, which gets you to capitulate. Then they accumulate when everyone else is fearful, believing that the bull market cycle is truly over. But how do we know we're still in a bull market cycle? Well, not only do we have virtually all of the bull market peak indicators in hold territory, so yes, although cryptos like Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, Chainlink, and even Floki have all been down this past week, causing many people to capitulate, this recent move and volatility to the downside, a scam pump, and another sell-off presents a unique opportunity and arguably an insight into the behavior of whales and institutions. So in this video, I'll be covering some news on the cryptos I just mentioned, alongside prices to buy dips on, strong pivot points, and places to keep your eyes on to know when things are truly turning up for price targets into the end of the year. And before we dive in, if you're a crypto investor with a slightly larger net worth, then you're gonna want to check this out from our very own Nick Anderson from the Bull Runners.
Have you built a crypto portfolio over $1 million but want to access your wealth without selling any of your coins? Well, imagine unlocking up to 85% of your portfolio's value to fund ventures like real estate, to buy other projects in the crypto space that are undervalued compared to the projects that you currently hold, or to diversify into different DeFi yield opportunities. That way you can live on the interest without selling any of your crypto. Well, we've partnered with a leading global office offering non-recourse crypto loans for investors with portfolios starting at $1 million. The same company that is trusted by the world's largest institutions and investors because, as you already know, the billionaires don't sell their crypto, they borrow against it. So if you're ready to unlock up to 85% of your portfolio's value without selling any of your coins and you have a portfolio with at least $1 million, then email us at team@bullrunners.com. You're going to see our email contact in the description below, and we'll get you connected with the company that has helped clients like ours north of $100 million borrow against their crypto without selling any of it. So reach out to start a conversation with our team right now at team@bullrunners.com, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hello and welcome back to the Bull Runners channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PauliDefi. And before we begin this video, if you have any questions about literally anything that we have to offer on this channel, whether it's Altcoin Pro University, whether it's joining our official Bull Runners Telegram, whether it's getting access to a non-recourse loan to borrow against your crypto, you can actually find a Telegram bot that we've linked down in the description below. And when you click through there, it'll actually get you all the information that you need, answer many of your questions, and then allow you access to some of these things. Or you can actually join our official Bull Runners Telegram. So go ahead and click on that link if you have any questions, and let's get into this video. So the first thing that I actually want to cover is this video from Tom Lee, who's been pretty consistent and solid as a fund manager, who's predicted a lot of what's occurred with crypto over the last couple of years, consistently been bullish on Bitcoin and actually the whole crypto market, going back to when this thing dumped to like $3,000. Now he's stating that Ethereum is the biggest macro trade over the next 10 to 15 years. And in all fairness, anyone can talk about is Ethereum recently. And that's because this thing has pumped extremely hard off its range lows of $1,391 to a new all-time high of $4,900 for about a current 232% gain, currently outperforming virtually everything else and virtually all of the cryptos that I mentioned as of right now. Now, the reason is because a lot of people have been pretty bullish on Ethereum being something that is going to stand to benefit from stablecoin legislation. It's also the largest L1 blockchain, and over the last year or two, it's been completely slept on. Everybody and their mothers sold Ethereum. So when there are no more sellers, at the end of the day, any amount of buying is going to push the price up. Then you had all sorts of different treasury companies diving in head first, buying Ethereum, and this thing has really been rallying quite strong, which has led much of the altcoin market to follow. So while Bitcoin is down 10.5% off its high, Ethereum is actually looking relatively stronger, only down 7%. And so I think Tom Lee in this short video provides some key insights into why Ethereum is such a strong trade over the upcoming decade.
Ethereum, has probably become the surprising sort of hit for cryptocurrencies this year because it's up 28%, outperforming Bitcoin. But in some of the work we've done, we believe it's the biggest macro trade over the next 10 to 15 years, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that stable coins have really become the ChatGPT moment for crypto. And now we have the Genius Act and Project Crypto from the SEC, which is Wall Street, essentially running onto the blockchain. But one of the best ways we believe to sort of have exposure is through Ethereum treasuries, and that's a company like BitMine, which I've become chairman recently.
Why are you so bullish on Ethereum? What are the opportunities you're seeing in Ethereum in particular?
Well, Ethereum is the second largest blockchain, and it's different than Bitcoin because with Bitcoin, you can't really do programmable contracts, so smart contracts. Wall Street needs to find a stable and legally compliant blockchain to work on. The majority of stablecoin creations are taking place on Ethereum. And when you look at where JP Morgan is building a lot of its layer 2s or Coinbase or Robinhood, they're choosing to do it on Ethereum. So it is the place where Wall Street is essentially financializing the system.
Now, obviously, it's not just Ethereum, as Ripple recently posted the $300 billion stablecoin market is set to grow into the trillions. Together with SBIVC official, they're bringing RLUSD to Japan in early 2026. And obviously, all of this will be running on the XRPL, as their stablecoin has consistently seen growth since the start of the year. And already we're seeing tons of applications where the RLUSD stablecoin is being used, as a portion of the IPO for a company called Bullish was settled directly using the RLUSD stablecoin. And obviously this is going to be one of many times where IPOs take place and are settled using stablecoins because they settle almost instantaneously on the XRPL for pennies. And not only is it efficient, but it's transparent. Now, that said, alongside Ethereum recently, Chainlink has been performing extremely well. And it's because Chainlink arguably is one of the most integrated blockchains in all of crypto. And it's not just about data or their Oracle business, as they are actually involved in much of traditional finance. And again, this is 100% verified if you go over to Chainlink or any of the websites with Swift, JP Morgan, UBS, Bancolombia, MasterCard, or DeFi applications. The Chainlink stack is consistently being used across the board for interoperability, privacy, data, and the list goes on. If there was ever a crypto that wasn't an easier play or had more utility, that has real partnerships and is onboarding much of the traditional financial system into crypto, Chainlink is definitely one of those cryptos. And I would argue, no matter how you spin it, a great investment into the future. Now, that is not financial advice, but it's rare I see a crypto like this doing so much, where it's actually integrated across the board on many blockchains as well. Now, speaking of blockchains, the biggest blockchain by far is Bitcoin. That doesn't mean it's necessarily being used more for all sorts of applications or transactions. It's just the biggest blockchain by market cap. That said, someone recently discovered an old video game from 1991 where on a token they found the Bitcoin logo. And yes, this is verified. And this video game was none other than Space Quest 4. The coin in the game is a form of money called buckazoids. Now, many people are starting to wonder whether or not Bitcoin was created using this example. Maybe the creators played this video game, enjoyed it so much, they took this logo and made it happen in 2009 when the first Bitcoin was mined back in like January of that year. Either way, it's actually quite interesting, and I think it's a really good theory nonetheless. There's a lot of other conspiratorial type stuff going around online, but generally speaking, I would say, hey, maybe these guys liked this logo. They played this game. They said, we're going to create Bitcoin and we're going to make it look exactly like this. That is probably the most realistic approach, or maybe it's just totally a coincidence. But either way, it's a really cool coincidence considering this is going back to before I was born. And finally, to cover some news on Floki, the people's cryptocurrency, probably one of the best meme coins in the entire space. And I would even argue no longer really a meme coin considering all of the different things that they offer inside of their ecosystem, whether it's Web3, whether it's domains, whether it's TokenFi and creating assets, like real world assets and bringing them on chain, trading bots, an actual NFT metaverse that you can play and earn rewards with their Floki token. At the end of the day, there is some pretty big news, and that is because Floki is now listed on the Robinhood app. And Robinhood is arguably one of the most influential retail trading platforms in the world with 25 plus million investors. And now that it's listed on Coinbase, Kraken, Robinhood, and virtually every single major exchange, it's not only not going away, but it's likely going to continue to grow, as it was listed directly next to and alongside a major real-world asset company called Ondo. So yes, Floki is being taken very serious and is seen as a legitimate asset by major exchanges with enough liquidity and a strong team to back it that they would be listed on a Robinhood. Now, before we dive into the price action and pivot points on each of the cryptos that we've mentioned at the beginning of this video and throughout, if you haven't had an opportunity to check it out, go to altcoinpro.com, or you can find that link in the description or the pinned comment below. We offer everything you could possibly think of to basically master the crypto market. This is your one-stop shop to help you become a crypto millionaire. Now, obviously, we can't guarantee that. We don't guarantee any results, but we've helped countless of our students get results, and that is why we have one of the highest retention rates in all of crypto. For example, one of our students was able to lock in gains gains on hype of 59%, on TRX at 11%, on ADA at 61%, and finally XRP at 139% as of recently. And again, this is applying all of the training and strategies that we coach here over at Altcoin Pro. Another one of our members, Brent, made some nice profits on altcoins that we shared inside of this channel. For example, he made some profits on Pump and Launchcoin and is up 214% on ENA, a crypto that we shared only for our private university members, and we show you exactly how to get access to these cryptos. Another one of our members earned 55% on a return in 4 days. And because he applied good strategies and risk management, he was actually stopped out on a pullback, but still made some really good gains. And we have countless students who are earning because they are involved with Altcoin Pro University. So if that sounds interesting, go to altcoinpro.com. And by the way, if you're like, this sounds like a lot for me, or I simply don't want to pay for that monthly fee, no big deal, because you can apply one of our quick win DeFi yield farm strategies. And basically within 14 days, if you're not able to at least put your crypto to work and earn more than enough to pay for your membership, then go ahead and ask for a refund. But we're so confident we can help you to do it. And that's why we have so many members that have consistently stuck with us for almost a year. So now let's dive into the price action, and I'm going to start with none other than Bitcoin because it's going to give us insights into what's going to happen with the rest of the crypto market. Even though we've actually seen some weakness across the board on certain cryptos and relative strength on others like Chainlink and Ethereum, at the end of the day, the crypto market will be led by Bitcoin. And as of right now, we've seen quite a bit of volatility. Again, we saw a pretty interesting pattern right here where we got a new all-time high above our prior all-time high, which came in on July 14th. So you can see we had a major run up, and then what occurred was a bull trap, right? And we've seen this in the past where the market rallies just past a prior high, a bunch of traders FOMO and enter in, only to see the market result in a steep sell-off. Then we had an interesting situation in a scenario here where on August 22nd, the market rallied really hard and held up for about a single day. If I go onto that daily time frame, you can see we rallied really hard, put in a major bullish engulfing candle, and all of those gains have been given back. And over the last 3 days, we've seen Bitcoin sell off to a new local low just below our prior low on August 3rd. So we've seen a lot of volatility, a lot of confusion in the market, capitulation. You could argue that this one little rally here truly was a banker's play. And so when you pull up that 10 and 20 EMA, you can see that now the price has sold off below the 10 and 20 EMA. We're getting a crossover on that fast moving average below the slow moving average, resulting in a bearish situation and pattern. Now from a 3-day time frame, this is the very first time in quite a while since the lows of 74,000 that the prices actually now broke down below the 10 and 20 EMA as well. So where we have a bit of support looking back into the past will be somewhere between $106,000 down to about $103,000 because Bitcoin is putting in a new low for the very first time in quite some time. And when I pull up that VRVP, you can see that the volume in this range is pretty big relative to other areas. So if we break down from here, obviously we're going to break down to somewhere around 96,000, but I believe we'll likely get a bounce if we break to at least 106 to 103. And this would be my zone or buy ranges to accumulate on a dip. Then it remains to be seen whether or not we make a new high at any point in time through the month, but it's likely it's going to happen into the end of the year. So this may be our actual last opportunity to buy in these ranges. And maybe that's exactly why we're seeing a pattern like this and a bunch of volatility from these major players, whales, institutions, because they do want you to capitulate into these ranges here where they can buy on the cheap before that final run up into the end of the year, which leads me into my point. And I'm going to dive into Ethereum next. Ethereum has held up pretty strong and relatively speaking far stronger than Bitcoin, especially when you're looking at that 3-day time frame. You can see that we're both above the 10 EMA and the 20 EMA, playing that that 10 EMA really well on the 3-day time frame. Even on the daily time frame, we recently on yesterday broke for a new all-time high of 49.55. Yes, that is a new all-time high for Ethereum, and now we've seen a bit of a sell-off. So I do want to practice some caution here considering where Bitcoin is at, which leads me to believe that we're likely going to break down a little bit further on Ethereum as well, and I'm looking at about a $4,300 dip or a target to start buying and accumulating. And that's because we have a crazy amount of support right down here at about $4,000, where you can see not only once, twice, 3 times we had support going back to February of this 2024 and also May of 2021. We've also seen a consistent growth in the buy volume on a weekly time frame. So yes, Ethereum is looking pretty good, although it could still break back down to $43,000 or $4,300 to even $4,000 yet again. And that's kind of where I'd be accumulating, potentially down to $3,700 if Bitcoin really starts to break down. But I don't see that happening at any point in the next week. So it remains to be seen. We'll be watching that very closely. Next, we're looking at XRP. From that weekly time frame, this thing has consistently been seeing sell pressure and a lot of bearish candles, with one bullish inside candle in August or early August of this last couple of weeks. But if XRP breaks down from here, it's likely this thing's going back to at least $2.70, where I'd start to buy a little bit more on that dip, because we have a lot of support between 270 down to 260, and in those ranges is not a bad time to accumulate, and I believe that will occur if Bitcoin continues to dump. Now, from a weekly perspective and time frame, Chainlink has been rallying extremely hard, and as you can see here, it's consistently been putting in a series of higher lows and higher highs, so it is in a strong uptrend, and I could easily see it hitting $52 yet again, or its prior all-time high going back to April of 2021, this bull market cycle. Even when you look at that volume, you can see massive growth and spikes in buy volume on a weekly time frame. On the daily time frame, we're still holding up pretty well at that 10 EMA, but again, if Bitcoin breaks down, my first range of support that I'm actually looking at is somewhere here between $23 down to $20, and that's where I'll be accumulating a lot more of this token, considering it is in a strong uptrend, the utility's there, a lot of buy volume is entering. And even from a 3-day time frame, a weekly time frame, that 10 and 20 EMA are holding up very well. On the VRVP side, we have a crazy amount of support coming down here to $20 and below. So I don't think this thing's going to break too much further than like $20 in my opinion if the entire market starts to break down, because I think the demand is truly there and we're seeing it appear on the volume. And finally, let's dive into Floki. This has to be easily one of the strongest chart patterns I've seen on virtually any meme coin, aside from a select few, because this thing is going all the way back to November of 2021. And as you can see here, when it breaks for new local highs, it really pumps hard. We see a crazy amount of growth in the buy volume, both back in March of 2024, November of 2024, where it failed to break for some new all-time highs. Now, I'm not saying it's going to break for some new all-time highs here anytime in the near future, but you never know. I think any dip is good for buying, considering this thing has consistently seen support along this very long-term trend line going back to June of 2022. So you can see we had a lot of support here, a lot of support here, yet again here, and so if this thing were to break down now that it's in a new uptrend, and here's how we know. Simple, right? Here's our major low of the range. Here's our next high. Here's our next low, next high. This high is higher than this high, this low is higher than this low. And so even if we were to break back down to, let's say, that 0.000076 range, at the end of the day, a buy right in this range right here would be a new higher low and a new low in that major uptrend. And by the way, if we break back above this range right here at the 120 range, as you can see, this is a lot of support, which has turned into a bit of a resistance. But as we get a new support along this trend line, I believe this will truly be what this chart needs to gain momentum to break through to the upside. And by the way, a break to the upside from that low, if it hits this range with the rest of the crypto market, is going to make for a new all-time high, considering this is a very long pattern. And by the way, this has only broke down less than 50% off the lows from this range. So if I were to take this fib tool and drag it to the very top, and let's just actually remove all those drawings because it can get kind of confusing. Take this fib tool, drag it from the bottom to the top of the range, you can see that this is textbook cup and handle. This would be your cup, this would be your handle, as long as it doesn't negate or break below that 0.5 retrace range and comes right back up to the top of this neckline or cup, then your risk to reward on a play like this is really strong if you focus on this trend line. So when this thing breaks, it's going to be explosive. And again, if it broke a little bit further down, your next major support would be right here. When you look back on the chart, you can see that this was a resistance which became a support. So our next major support would be that 0.06, X amount of 0.6 range right here. So between here and here, if you were to accumulate and buy somewhere in that range, you can see that the risk to reward for some new all-time highs upon a breakout would be tremendous. Let's go ahead and get that risk to reward tool right here and see what that would look like. Let's say you accumulate at an average price right here. Let's say your stop loss is right below the range right here, and your new take profit is somewhere into new all-time high territory. By the way, you'd usually do 100% of the move from the bottom of the range to the top right here, and it wouldn't be like a 5,600% gain, but it would be like a 0.0003 gain. So if we just took that exact same tool from here and did a 0.0003 range, that's still 110% up from that prior range high. But if you were to add that up in terms of a risk to reward basis, and I believe this thing will explode far further than that personally, I'm just doing proper technical analysis, this is still a 21-to-1 risk to reward. In other words, for every dollar you risk, you stand to gain 21 times that. So do the math on something like that. This is easily one of the best plays in the meme space that I've seen so far. So do with that information what you will. But at the end of the day, the real safe plays are always going to be something like Bitcoin and Ethereum. You're just not going to see the same types of gains or risk to reward. Then if we're talking in terms of relative strength right now, Ethereum and Chainlink are holding up best. XRP is not looking as good on the relative strength side, and I would wait for more of a dip. Actually, on all of them, I'd be waiting for a dip. It's just that XRP has been underperforming now. And by the way, so has Bitcoin. Bitcoin and XRP are currently underperforming Chainlink and Ethereum. So when I see that type of relative strength, I typically toss more of my bag at the cryptos that are holding up better, because that is indicative of strong demand from institutional players. But anyways, there you have it, folks. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you learned something new. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the Telegram bot, and also I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.